I beg your indulgence. I've been traveling actually in Russia for much of April and May, and I'm afraid I brought back a touch of
Radioactivity.
bronchitis. Radioactivity is a problem, and I am actually looking for competent experts of stable mentality who would be able to provide expertise on depleted uranium, objedjony uran, which is, I think, being used by NATO against the Donetsk People's Republic. They're certainly under attack with cluster bombs, with phosphorus, and I believe with depleted uranium weapons. And I thought that the level of awareness of this could well be enhanced, and that we would try to contribute to that. However, some of this stuff will come in other interventions. Right? I'm fortunate, honored to be on approximately 5 of these panels. So if you want to get your fill of me, now's your chance. So what I wanted to do this morning is to simply situate the program of the Tax Wall Street Party and why this is, I think, unique and indispensable, and a great gift for candidates, because it's a program which has been shown to be a mass traction program. That is to say, it enjoys mass support from the California Bay Area to Nebraska to Northeast Pennsylvania to, indeed, Essex in Great Britain, where we've just had a candidate. The Tax Wall Street Party program, it seems to me, has the ability to address what is actually happening in the world. So let's see what we do here with our equipment. There we go. So look, we're the Tax Wall Street Party, founded in New York City just a couple of days before Superstorm Sandy. I think it was October 30th, 2012. And the goal at that point was, it was about to be the re-election of Obama, and it was clear that that wouldn't solve anything, but rather make many things worse. We are based on a conjunctural perspective, which essentially says that the world has not recovered from the world depression that started with Lehman Brothers, as was said, in 2008, and that we will be heading towards future catastrophic events, that is to say, sickening downward lurches in the world economic and political situation. So we have always got to be prepared for the next downturn in this post-2008 world depression. Now, we've had candidate for Senate in Nebraska, candidate for Congress in the wine country, Napa, Sonoma, candidate for local office in Northeast Pennsylvania. And we've had, of course, Randy Credico here in New York City and New York State, running for mayor and then for governor, with the backing of the Tax Wall Street Party, among others. So, I think this is a growing phenomenon. And indeed, in the British general election, we made our European debut. So this is in South Grindleton and
East Basildon, South Thurrock.
East Basildon, South Thurrock. South Thurrock, you know. So, and that was the only anti-austerity candidate in the entire British election, because you had right-wing reactionaries who wanted to impose killer cuts in terms of fiscal and budget austerity, and left-wing lunatics who wanted energy austerity and were going to kill people that way. So there's the fix that the British people were in. So we at least laid down a marker on that. Now, we have a daily morning briefing. It's gaining in influence. If you know the famous radio TV personality Lionel, he's on Russia Today. He used to be on the morning show here in New York City. Everybody knows who he is. He has very kindly spoken very nice words about our program. So, if you want a free subscription to the morning briefing, ask us and we'll give it to you. All right. Now, we also try to incorporate the lessons of recent development. So, what are the lessons of Occupy? Well, it's very simple. Occupy had no demands. Occupy said demands were wrong. Demands were bad. You should not have demands. You might win your demands, and then you'd be co-opted, and you couldn't live in the park anymore. You'd have to stop being an anarchist and join the rest of the people. So the lesson of Occupy in our book is that you've got to have class-based mass traction economic demands, and these express the life or death needs of the middle class as they advance towards the future. Now, we view the coming of Syriza, as was stated, as a confirmation, a kind of vindication of our outlook as against the Occupy. In other words, we're heavy on demands, right? We have a whole program. If you go to the top of Tarpley.net, there's a program that's been up there for quite a few years, 2 whole pages packed with demands. And we want to win any one of them we can. Occupy said, no, that's wrong. Well, Syriza has decided the question. They have mass traction economic demands. Cut the debt of the country by 50%, roll back all austerity, roll back all firings, roll back all cuts, rehire people, and they even have programs for business and economic development. So, the mass traction class-based program. You need a centralized organization. Occupy actually had a centralized organization, but most of the participants didn't know it was there because it consisted in certain key people, many of them sporting military haircuts, disappearing at a certain time of day and coming back a couple of hours later with decisions. So there was a centralized apparatus, but most people, again, didn't get to take part. Ours is fairly open. We want to have people doing more or less the same thing across the world so as to magnify the impact of what it is. So you can't just do your own thing, have your own shtick. You got to somehow align with these other efforts. The strategy is similar to Syriza. Anti-austerity. Don't make austerity compromises for any reason. No way, not in any way, shape, or form. So there's an absolute red line on austerity. And we want to develop leadership. In other words, we're delighted to see young people coming forward and being part of this process of development. A number of them have already run for political office, and many more will in 2015 and then especially in 2016. We've already got a situation where our candidate in the San Francisco Bay Area got the highest percentage of votes, well, the second highest percentage of votes of any independent candidate in the United States. The guy who got the highest was this character in Kansas who had all kinds of money because it looked like he could defeat the Republicans. So a lot of money was poured into that. We didn't have any of that. We got the second highest percentage of votes. There would be much more to say about the development of the party, but I think you get the general idea. Now, what is it that we want with our big, heavy program? The Wall Street sales tax. Don't just whine and complain about Wall Street. Hit them. Hit them hard. Hit them in the pocketbook. Hit them in the labanza, as they used to say. So a 1% tax, not on profits. Profits can be hidden. On trading, turnover, what goes across the exchange, can't be hidden. It's going to be taxed. That's on the notional value of derivatives, right? If you're talking credit default swaps, collateralized debt obligations, it's on the value of the assets underlying the derivative, which are being pledged. It goes above all on derivatives, stocks, bonds, and other instruments. It's paid by the seller. We have revenue sharing. The federal government collects it and gives half to the states according to an equitable formula, and a significant amount would reach a place like New York City. Remember, Wall Street pays no taxes, by and large. The fiscal crisis of the United States is attributable to the fact that Wall Street doesn't pay anything. They pay virtually no sales tax. Now, what's the virtual? The virtual is that there is a 0.0036% tax on stocks, and that finances the Securities and Exchange Commission. That's how they get paid. But other than that, it's virtually nothing. And most of these entities, like Goldman Sachs or General Electric, escape the federal corporate income tax completely. They're always whining. They say, oh, we have the highest federal corporate income tax of any country in the world. Yeah, if you paid it, but you don't. So nobody pays it. Goldman Sachs pays 2 to 3%. General Electric, much more clever, they actually pay a negative rate. They get more money back than what they pay as taxes. Their refund is bigger than anything they've ever paid in. Now, most people are not aware of these essential facts. They don't know this. Once they do, they are filled with a burning desire to impose on Wall Street some kind of equity in the form of the fact that they should pay. So, this essentially solves the budget problem.
Most people don't understand how General Electric is tied to Wall Street. Why would we say General Electric is a
It was 20 years ago they were defined. If you read my Cataclysm book on sale outside at reduced prices, you can see some of them are a little bit nicked. Right? There's some of them that have suffered in transit. They're a little bit bent out of shape. Right?
Patina.
Many people have accused me of being a warped writer and analyst, and I'm afraid I have some books out there for $5 each that are actually somewhat warped. But please don't hesitate; it's still all there. The way they do that is that, as I say in that book, it's a hedge fund in drag. And indeed, right now, the head of it, Immelt, claims that he's selling off the hedge fund part. I don't know how he's going to do that, because the hedge fund part is the main part. It's not an industrial corporation anymore and has not been. So that's how they get back more. Plus, Immelt is a notorious political crony of Obama, Immelt being the president of General Electric. Okay, now we have the nationalization, or, as some insist, the deprivatization, a little bit more oblique, but still the idea is there, of the Federal Reserve System. So, why borrow from China? Why insist on taxing people who can't be taxed really any more than they are, when you have the Federal Reserve, the biggest river of money in the universe, the institution that opened up a credit line of 27 trillion US dollars for the zombie banks, and not just for US zombie banks, but for foreign zombie banks, for Barclays, for Royal Bank of Scotland, for Societe Generale, and so on down the line. So why look for money when the US government has created this huge river of money? So what we're calling for, and this can be done without Congress. You don't need Congress for this. This can be done with a phone call. Since the Federal Reserve operates outside the law, for all intents and purposes, you can force them to do things that the Congress would never approve. You don't have to wait for Congress. A real president would be on the phone with Yellen of Brooklyn, and say, Yellen, guess what? You're opening a $5 trillion infrastructure window on Monday morning, and we're going to have all the governors send you bond issues that they want you to buy, and you're going to buy them, and you're going to give them 0% coupon rate, 100-year maturity, right? And you're going to put that into infrastructure, tangible, physical production, commodities, manufacturing, reindustrialization, not financial services. We have quite enough of that, thank you, but actual production. These will be 0% interest rate, 0% coupon, century bonds, 100-year maturities. In addition to the $5 trillion, the $5 trillion goes to rebuild the entire infrastructure, rail, highway, water, energy, schools, libraries, hospitals, everything that's needed. The U.S. is a post-industrial junk heap. Here's how you change that. We would also like about $1.5 trillion for the students who are being crushed by high-interest student loans. The least we can do, and this, again, it can be done with a phone call. You don't need the Congress to do this. During the crisis, the Federal Reserve said to the zombie banks of the world, we have $27 trillion for you. There was no law, no discussion, no Congress, no president, no nothing. They did it. They can do it. They can do it this way too. $1.5 trillion to refinance all student loans down to 0% 100-year maturity. So your student loan would be made at least manageable. And of course, Tremendous increase in the funding of the Export-Import Bank, which the Republicans wish to destroy, as you know. So that's the second prong. This essentially restarts your economy. The reason that the various stimuli of the Obama administration have not worked is because they have only had to do with consumer spending. Consumer spending. Well, in order to get out of a depression, you have to restart capital goods production. Mommy, what are capital goods? Well, it means electric plants, it means locomotives, it means all of the heavy-duty, long-term, big-ticket investments that are part of this. Now, a very timely point, this is our third point for right now, I would say, stop free trade, stop the fast track, that goes without saying. The Democratic Party will say, oh, we're so verklempt. Elizabeth Warren is verklempt. She has to be against Obama because Obama wants fast track and Elizabeth Warren doesn't want it. So it's all about this fast track, yes, fast track. No, forget about fast track. Forget about these bills. We want a 15% protective tariff. It's really not a protective tariff, historically speaking, but today it looks like one, so that'll be good enough for us. 15% protective tariff. So we want to put an end to the giant sucking sound evoked by little Perot 20 years ago of the runaway shop and the race to the bottom as all those jobs depart from the United States. It makes no sense. It's anti-economical. And now, an emergency point, okay? As a result of the mass strike, especially in the black population, as a result of out of control police departments and racist practices, I'm afraid I've got my top line off. It says, Black Lives Matter, 10 million well-paid starter jobs for unemployed youth. 10 million. It means right now, coming up here, we drove through a very despair-ridden corner of Wilmington, Delaware. And you can just look around and see. It's going to be a long, hot summer. It's going to be ugly because people are really hurting. They're unemployed. They're in despair. We got to do something about that. 10 million jobs right now in the next 2 months. May is gone. So let's make it 1 month. Actually, it should be 2 weeks. We'll see who can do that. 10 million new jobs for unemployed youth. Now, the model for this is Mayor Marion Barry of where I live, Washington, D.C., in the 1980s started this program. If you were a teeny bopper, if you were a teenager in Washington, D.C., you'd get a summer job. Black, Latino, anybody who needed it got a job. Barry would go to these people like Catherine Meyer Graham of the Washington Post, and he'd say, Katie, your job quota is 500. How dare you? How dare you? Who are you? I'm Catherine Meyer Graham. The presidency trembles. Nixon trembles. No, 500 jobs, please. So that's why they entrapped him, right? They entrapped him with cocaine pipes and hookers and all the rest of this. So he had a program of summer jobs. Now, the trick about this is he died several months ago. And people were coming on the radio saying, that guy changed my life. My first job, my first paycheck, my first dignity, my first assimilation into the workforce. This is the stuff you've got to have. And this is a matter of national security. The United States must develop all persons within the jurisdiction into highly skilled, productive labor for the 21st century, right? In pharma, in biotech, in space, in high energy physics, and whatever else. At the level of 21st century technology. And if you want to know what 21st century technology is, the Chinese will teach you, the Russians will teach you, and the Europeans will teach you, because that's who you have to compete with. And you can't do it with this low-wage model. You cannot consign so many people to the human junk heap. The case in point, West Baltimore, Maryland, okay? Big upheaval in recent weeks. What's the unemployment rate in West Baltimore? It's 52%. Now, I don't care about police. I care about policing, but there's no amount of judicial or police reform that's going to bring tranquility to a neighborhood where there's 52% unemployed. You've got to attack that. You've got to cut that in half and then cut it in half again and then again after that. That's our 10 million job program. Now, I recommend the spirit of Harry Hopkins. We'll get to that in a minute. So here's Barry, the late Barry, and his hallmark was a job for every teenager who comes forward and asks for one, at whatever level you can occupy, but paid, a real job, not a pretend job, with a real paycheck. And of course, the model for doing these things in very short order is Harry Hopkins, one of the heroes of 20th century American history. Many people have never heard of him. This guy was the main helper of Franklin D. Roosevelt. FDR brought him into the White House. He lived in the White House for quite a number of years. He was the first one sent to Stalin, the first one sent to Churchill, the first one sent all around the world. He probably did as much as any single person to win World War II. The part of his heritage that I wanted to evoke was in the winter of 1933 to 1934, there were probably 15, 20 million Americans who were about to literally die from starvation. So jobs had to be delivered immediately. And the story is he got some rooms in an office building in Washington, sat down on packing crates, picked up telephones, and started calling governors and said, I have $100 million for you, hire 20,000 workers, and then we'll take it from there, and so on. So that he actually saved hundreds of thousands of lives, quite possibly, in that winter of 33-34. And this is the Works Progress Administration, WPA, Works Progress Administration. This is, when you go to the Middle West, every public library, every school, WPA, every bridge on roads of a certain age, WPA. So this can all be done again, and should be, and must be. So that's, again, our program. Tax Wall Street, 1% turnover. Seize the Fed. 15% protective tariff. 10 million emergency jobs for reasons of public security, but mainly to bring 10 million kids into the workforce, where the job creators, the Republicans are always telling us, oh, Boehner and Mitch McConnell, they're saying, the job creators have got to be allowed to do their work. Well, where are they? They've struck out. They failed. So enough of the job creators, and let's actually create some jobs. That's the Tax Wall Street Party in a nutshell. So thank you.